Hey guys, Beta 1 Studios right here with another very interesting Element 3D tutorial. Now, it's been quite a while since I released an Element tutorial, so I went and rummaged through my folder of tutorial ideas to try and find a really special one to do today. And that's when I stumbled upon this video. So about 2 years ago, back when I was just starting to learn the ropes of 3D motion graphics, I was on the lookout for new and interesting ways to spruce up my Element 3D animations. And that's when I came across this idea of animated textures. Textures that aren't just static images or backdrops. And then after seeing that particular video, it got me wondering if I could figure out how to make my own version of these so-called animated textures. And so, that's exactly what I did. Alright, so here we are inside of After Effects. Now, the way this is going to work is I'm going to split this technique into two different tutorials. In part 1, we're going to create the animated textures themselves, and in part 2, we're going to take these textures and apply them to the surfaces of 3D objects inside of Element. For this tutorial, I've chosen two of my favorite types of animated textures that I've managed to recreate. First, a warping carbon fiber texture, and second, this liquidy kind of energy texture. Both of these are super simple and easy to make, so let's get started. First off, let's make a new composition, and make sure you set your composition length to be long enough to cover the length of your full animation. For instance, if you plan on making a 15-second long animation, you should make this texture composition at least 15 seconds as well to match it. Since this is only a demonstration, I'm going to make mine 5 seconds long and hit OK. Now, I'm going to be making the carbon fiber texture first, so let's make a new solid with Ctrl Y. We're going to need this solid to be an incredibly small square, maybe something like 15 by 15. As you can see, we now have our plain solid square upon which we'll be building our entire texture. Next, let's apply the gradient ramp effect onto our square here, like so. I'm just going to swap these colors real quick so that the lighter color is on top, for reasons I'll get to later on. And let's also make this ramp a bit more subtle by making the white into a more silverish color. Okay, so our setup is done. Now it's time to do some replication of our solid layer. There's actually an effect that does a perfect job of replicating layers, and it's called CC Yeah, we're gonna use this thing, and like its name implies, it repeats and tiles your layers however you want. So, for instance, if I take the expand right parameter and increase it, it will start replicating my layer to the right. The same goes for all the other directions as well. So, let's set the expand right and left values to 1000, let's say, and set the expand down and up values to about 600. So that we fill up our entire comp. And the last thing we need to do is offset all our replicated solids. We can do that by going to the tiling dropdown and selecting a vertical checker flip, which will flip every other square upside down vertically in a checkered fashion. Now, to me, it's all about the details, so to add a bit of additional flair, we can also make this carbon fiber texture a little more gritty and rough looking by increasing the ramp scatter by a tiny amount. This scatters the pixels of our gradient and makes each square less smooth and more of a sandpapery texture. What you can also do is change the ramp from linear to radial, which will give your carbon fiber more of a spherical look. Incidentally, the reason I swapped the colors of the ramp is because when you switch from linear to radial, the carbon fiber texture will generally look better if you have the lighter color on the inside. But I actually prefer the linear ramp because the radial style just pops out a bit too much for my taste. Another option you have to make your texture a bit more refined is to add some glow to it, though it might be a good idea to turn up the threshold a bit so that it's not too bright. Alright, so if I leave it as it is right now, our carbon fiber texture is just going to be a static image. So let's change that up a bit with a quick turbulent displacement. Let's make a new adjustment layer using Ctrl-Alt-Y and apply our distortion effect. Okay, that was way too much distortion, so why don't we turn down the displacement amount to about 10 or so. And let's go ahead and set our evolution keyframes, starting from 0 times at 0 seconds, and ending with 5 times at 5 seconds. This gives us a nice subtle warping effect that completes our carbon fiber animated texture. Alright, so on to our second texture of the day, which is this liquidy energy texture. I already took the liberty of making a new composition, so let's go right ahead and make a new solid, which we'll make into the comp size. And now we're ready to apply a quick turbulent noise effect to our solid. And to get the kind of liquidy texture that I'm looking for, I'm going to change my fractal type from basic to swirly, which does exactly what it sounds like. We can also adjust the brightness here. Now, depending on what you want, you can select different types of noise to change the way in which the noise particles are generated. I'm going to change my noise type to spline because it does a slightly better job of dynamically smoothing out transitions between the clusters of noise particles. In this particular case, it only makes a minuscule difference in the appearance of the overall effect, but I still think it's worth a try. And we can increase the complexity of the noise to create a more intricate pattern in our liquid texture here. And just like before, a static image isn't going to do us any good. We're going to want to set our evolution keyframes going from 0 times to 5 times start to finish. Another thing we should try is to add a simple curve to our texture here. You can adjust brightness and contrast pretty easily using a curve, but what I've created here is one particular curve variation that I happen to like. I think it works well with the liquid texture by bumping up contrast without totally blowing out the brighter areas. And just like in my custom shockwaves tutorial, I'll have a link to download this particular curve as a .acv file right down in the description. One last thing, you can adjust the size of your noise by rolling down the transform options and adjusting the scale, which is essentially a glorified zoom function in this case. Alright, so that's about all I've got for part 1. We've successfully created both a warping carbon fiber texture and a liquid energy texture right inside of After Effects, and now all that's left to do is map these textures to actual 3D objects using Element 3D. So be sure to watch part 2 of this tutorial, and until then, I will catch you guys next time.